Welcome to Fridays with Coco, and number 5 in a series of 6 in which we're exploring different ways of how we are the hands of God. Through the ecumenical prayer cycle, this week we will be praying for people who live in Nigeria and Ghana, right here in this part of Coco's beach ball globe. In 1 year's time, by naming just a few countries each week, we will have included all the people in God's world. We begin today with a reading of the Gospel of John, chapter 14, verses 1 through 14. Jesus said, "Do not let your hearts be troubled. Believe in God. Believe also in me. In God's house there are many dwelling places. If it were not so, would I have told you that I go to prepare a place for you? And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and will take you to myself, so that where I am, there you may be also. And you know the way to the place where I am going." Thomas, who was among the disciples, said to Jesus, "We do not know where you are going. How can we know the way?" Jesus said to Thomas, "I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to God except through me. If you know me, you know God also. From now on, you do know God and have seen God." Philip said to Jesus, "Show us God, and we will be satisfied." Jesus said to Philip, "Have I been with you all this time, and you still do not know me? Whoever has seen me has seen God. How can you say, 'Show us God'? Do you not believe that I am in God, and God is in me? The words that I say to you, I do not speak on my own. But God, who dwells in me, does God's works. Believe me that I am in God and God is in me. But if you do not believe me, then believe me because of the works themselves. Very truly I tell you, the one who believes in me will also do the works that I do, and in fact will do greater works than these, because I am going to God. I will do whatever you ask in my name, so that God may be glorified in me. If in my name you ask me for anything, I will do it." The word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God. You heard it here. We have heard, and we will tell the story. Here is an amazing and wonderful picture of something that most of you might recognize, but you're going to learn all about it because on the back is Coco's poem of the week. Coco's poem is entitled, "That's Just Shellarious." There are creatures that make us feel warm and fuzzy with furry bodies and tails. And then there are ooky ones that are slippery and slimy, like slugs and snails. Slugs and snails, known for speed or lack thereof, are in fine company, right I am, as part of a phylum called mollusks, which includes the oyster, the mussel, and the clam. The wriggly and gushy slug is quite modest in hiding its shell plates on the inside, while the snail proudly displays a high, rising, protective, and swirling shell on the outside. These two creatures have other differences known only to experts with more information, like removing a snail's shell won't make it more sluggish, not a complete transformation. A mollusk is not an amphibian or an insect, ideas that may be easily misconstrued, but you can completely be sure that consuming snails will avoid eating fast food. You can also be sure in assuming land snails have lungs and sea snails have gills. There's one water type that can even send a breathing tube up to the surface when it wills. The ancient pre-Columbian people thought a snail to be a symbol of joy and living well, because the circle of life is represented by the swirling of the decorative shell. The large conch shell, which for a home snail at one time might depend, can later become a musical instrument when buzzing human lips blow through one end. The French Baroness Hélène van Zuylen loved to race motor cars and went on to fame, kiddingly called Snail by her husband, who decided that was an apt nickname. While standing with his friends at the racetrack, he would lovingly tip his chapeau and shake his head in amazement of her achievements, uttering, "Look at escargot." That escargot pun may not be too Shellarious, so maybe this'll get your attention. A snail shell can swirl to the left or right, and either is considered normal, I must mention. There's an astounding fact about a snail shell that should bring you intellectual delight. The direction of the swirl determines the placement of the internal organs, left or right. That's a lot to digest. I know I've had my share of snails once upon a time, but anyway, we are talking about how maybe God does not have actual hands, and that because we are created by God, we have the hands that God needs to do God's work and to do ministry here in this world. We're going to hear from some very special guests of Cocoa, and all of them have the same last name. The name is D-R-U-P-E, Droop. Now don't get confused, it's not D-R-O-O-P. Let's go to the BTW, by the way, basket of droops, and find out just a little more. By the way, number one, my name is Mio Droop. It's quite a name. Mio is a Japanese word that means beautiful or cherry. There are over 6,500 families with the last name Droop in the world, and despite some ribbing about being D-R-O-O-P-Y, not D-R-U-P-E-Y, I kind of like having a name that's not too common. And who could have a name like Droop and not explore what the word might mean? Many fruits are droops because they have one seed, and one seed only, contained centrally in some kind of a stone or pit. And my favorite droop is the cherry. Did you know that the average cherry tree produces over 7,000 cherries annually? Just imagine if each one of those cherries became a tree. That would be a huge orchard, actually a forest of cherry trees. Anyway, I love that part of the John reading that tells us Jesus is already preparing a place for us in the heavenly kingdom. Did you notice that some of the disciples were just a bit skeptical? Some of them were demanding more proof. It's kind of cool that Jesus didn't just stoop down to their level and do yet another miracle just to prove that his word is good. Rather, Jesus restated that he is God and that his presence is proof enough. I'm so aware of the presence of Jesus in my life, and I'm glad that there's a heavenly home waiting for me. After all, I don't want to end up in the pits. Wonder if that was one of those pun intended things. We may never know. Okay, stand up a little more, or not. Next, we have something looking very delicious. By the way, number 2, my name is Georgia Droop. I'm from Atlanta, and I'm also a droop lover. My favorite fruit droop being the peach, which must come as no surprise with a name like Georgia. After all, most of us know that Georgia is the peach state, with those wonderful trees that can produce at least 500 peaches annually. I've heard the John reading many times, and I always remind myself that in the chapter before it, Jesus reveals many things about who he is. By his farewell address at his Last Supper with the disciples, by washing the feet of the disciples and explaining what it meant, by foretelling the betrayal by Judas, by telling them he will be with them only a little while longer, and that where he is going, they cannot go, and foretelling Peter's imminent denial. Do the math. All of this ended up filling the disciples with a lot of anxiety. That's when Jesus makes an abrupt shift by stating words of comfort. Do not let your hearts be troubled. If you ask me, those words aren't just peachy. They're ones that I might need to put on a sign and then put that sign in a place where I will see it every day, because those are really good words to live by. I'll say, there's nothing like the smell of a peach pie in the oven. I don't think we have one today. But we do have some of Coco's extra virgin olive oil. We're never without that around here. Go ahead. By the way, number 3. My name is Oliver Droop, and I have a twin sister named Olive. Did you know that the average olive tree produces at least 1,500 olives every year? And what country do you think grows the most olives in a year? No, not Italy. Guess again. No, not Greece. Guess again. That's right, Spain, with almost 10 million tons of olives every year, more than 5 times what is produced in Italy or Greece. Now, that really puts Spain on the map. Speaking of maps, when Jesus tells the disciples that they already know how to get to the place where he is going, Thomas instantly says, "We do not know." Thomas was being so literal, as if Jesus was going to hand them some kind of a road map. It's easy for us to do a bit of tisking at Thomas, but we have to remember that we live on this side of the Easter event, the resurrection event, and we kind of know how the story comes out. Unlike olden times, we don't really need road maps so much anymore. We have GPS, and somehow we just trust the GPS to tell us with some kind of a voice that we are going to get where we want to go. So I ask you, what is your heavenly GPS voice? Mine is Jesus. That's a great thing. I never thought about that before. Jesus as a GPS. And here we are. I always say it. How can we be at number 4 so soon? Give this year a little bit of a rest. Okay, speak up. By the way, number 4. Yeah, we knew that. My name is Mirabelle Droop. You might know that there is a wonderful Mirabelle plum that originated in France. It grows on a tree that can produce almost 800 plums in a year. I like having such a delicious name. Anyway, there's only one line that really sticks out in me in this John reading because it's one that I like to talk about when I get together with others to tell my story. And the line is this: no one comes to God except through me. Let me tell you, that's a line that's often misunderstood. So listen to it again. No one comes to God except through me. Some people think that these words are like an or else kind of threat, that without following some kind of special or secret roadmap to heaven, you're out. Instead, Jesus speaks these words to bring comfort to the disciples who are being told that he will be going away. They are to understand that the way to continue to follow Jesus is simple. And this is what it is: faith. That's right. We are saved by faith, only faith, and not our works. Yeah, I know there's stuff about works in the John reading, but I'll leave that for someone else to talk about. If it's someone else, either I'm going to be the one, or it's, by the way, number 5. So let's try to find out. Okay, this here's ready again. Oh yeah, by the way, number 5. My name is Clementine Droop. And you might think by my name that my favorite fruit is a clementine orange. But no, it's the loquat. How do you spell that? Loquat. Loquat. Well, tell us some more about it. The loquat is a tree that produces about 3,000 pieces of fruit every year. And not everybody knows a lot about the loquat. So you might want to look up some information about it rather than make any assumptions. My mom, like many people, often used different adages, and one of her favorites was, "Don't judge a book by its cover." Sometimes she was encouraging me to not make snap judgments by looking at something only from the outside. A little like Coco wrote in her poem about the arrangement of the internal organs of a snail relating to the direction of the shell's swirl. My mom also said this adage to me when we would be reading the Bible, because so many things had to be understood in more than just literal terms. When Jesus said, "The one who believes in me will also do the works that I do, and, in fact, do greater works than these. He was laying out a mission for the disciples. And here's why. When Jesus performed miracles, the faith of someone would always be increased. In the John reading, Jesus was telling the disciples that he would no longer be with them in the flesh to help people find and increase their faith. The disciples would now need to do this. And if he was speaking to those disciples, he was speaking to all of us. There you have it. Once again, you should just see, Thursday nights around here with all these guests, and we only have one guest room, but that might be a story for another day. When I was growing up in Vermont, there was a man named Joe who lived a little further up the road. Every day I would see Joe walking home from work, carrying lumber, a few boards at a time. Joe lived in a very old house that looked like a gentle wind would knock it down. Even the paint had long since given up trying to cling to the decaying wood. For years, Joe kept bringing lumber to his dilapidated house. One day, Joe began tearing down his house, and as he did, one could see a new house emerging, one that he had already built, one that had simply been hidden by the old house. This simple little Joe story is somewhat like a parable, in that there was something quite wonderful and amazing being built, but none of us knew it until it was revealed to our eyes. Eyes that tended to look at things from the outside in, kind of like that adage about people who are warned against judging a book by its cover. But Joe knew something about not giving up his old house until he knew where his new one would be. As a faithful steward, Joe lived within his means and only purchased what he could afford and carry, which was just a board or two at a time. In some way, turtles carry their shell homes. Snails carry their shell homes. A shell that weighs more than their body. Vermont Joe, like a slow and steady snail, literally carried his house piece by piece, board by board, until he could assemble it. Jesus agonizingly carried a cross, an actual cross that was his last earthly home, that may have weighed more than twice his own weight. We do not need to carry an actual cross, but there is a wonderful and mysterious phenomenon that we carry Jesus in us, but Jesus carries us. For all the things that we hang on to and carry, like our homes and possessions and money, the only thing that Jesus encourages us to keep is the belief that we already have a heavenly home. Jesus said little about what that heavenly home actually looks like. He only emphasized the promise. Through our belief, we are already carrying our heavenly home, a place to which we will go, a place that is promised and was written about in the John reading. The snail needs to carry its shell. The drupes need to carry a seed protected by a pit or a stone. But Jesus tells us that we only need to carry the belief that our true house is already prepared for us. By the way, number 6. Did you notice that each of Coco's guests, the drupes, mentioned the approximate yield of each kind of drupe tree? All of them were in the hundreds or thousands. That means that each one of them has the potential to spread themselves all over. And that is what we are called to do. Called to spread ourselves by telling our story. Called by those words Jesus gave us, "The one who believes in me will also do the works that I will do, and, in fact, will do greater works than these." And that's just one reason we know that we are needed to be the hands of God in God's world. For our time of relatively quiet meditation, we are continuing in this series of pieces by Edvard Grieg. And yes, I know my voice gets a little bit bigger, but you'll just have to deal with that. And these are pieces that he arranged so that they might be played with just one hand, either one, or two. And this one is called Lullaby. And here is Angel, one of the most beautiful alligators in all of South Florida. And who knows, Angel is looking very, very happy today. Did you brush your teeth? Okay, here we go. Now I need some space for this. almost asleep, aren't you? Okay, close your eyes. Let us pray. Gracious God, thank you for Jesus, the true light and the true vine who connects us all, those we know and those we have not met. Thank you for the words of Jesus from the Gospel of John, words that teach us of your promise to give us all a heavenly home, one that we receive by faith alone, one that keeps our hearts from being troubled. As we show reverence for life and pray for all of your children and creatures, we give thanks that all of us are sisters and brothers, friends as Jesus calls us friends. And we especially lift up those who live in Ghana and Nigeria, who you know each by name. Give us generous hearts for giving to others what is right and only keeping what is left. As we continue to live during this time of global pandemic, we lift up all with any health issues, all who are caregivers, and all who are transitioning from this life to the next, either alone or with loved ones. We give you thanks for giving us Jesus, by whose living, dying, and rising to new life assures us that we too are promised that new life. As faith-filled people, fill us with your holy gifts of hope, peace, love, and joy. God, for all that has been, we say thanks. For all that will be, we say yes. And we say thanks and yes in the name of the one who gave himself completely for us, Jesus. Amen. May God bless you today. Amen.